And so I think in a moment we may be seeing Karen George join us on screen. And very much looking forward to have the chance to chat with all of you. There she is. There's Mrs. George. Hi, Mrs. George. I think you want to turn your phone 90 degrees.
Oh, do I? Okay.
There you go.
I was hoping I could just put it down, but that's fine.
Fantastic. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah.
So, Mrs. George, we've got about 22 people so far. There's more people coming on board. And so I was just talking about kind of our format here. We're going to be gathering on Sunday afternoons, at least through April and probably into May. We might take Easter Sunday off to give you all a break, but we're going to try and each Sunday afternoon have the chance to chat with different members of the YOSA faculty and have this chance to answer some questions and explore. And so we've already received a few questions in advance, but for those of you who have tuned in, as you hear us talking today, you can feel free to send questions along. I've already seen a couple come by. And don't worry, we will come back to your questions. If you don't hear us answer them right away, we are going to come back to them and address them as we go through today. So I wanted to just start off as we're getting going with introducing myself, introducing Mrs. George, and kind of giving you guys a chance to get to know a little bit more about Mrs. George's journey as a musician. So I'm Troy Peters, I'm the music director at YOSA, and I'm joined by Karen George, who conducts YOSA Repertory Strings, and is also the orchestra director at Lady Bird Johnson High School in Northeast ISD. But Mrs. George, I was wondering if you could tell us about what brought you to this place? What made you decide as a young person that you wanted to become an orchestra teacher, an orchestra conductor? How did that happen for you? What made you fall in love with this?
Well, my background is I have both my parents have a music background. My dad plays trombone, and he was actually used to play in the San Antonio Symphony, and then is retired now, but taught at San Antonio College. My mom plays cello, and so she has been teaching cello since before I was born, private lessons. And so I grew up in music, and so that was kind of what I was surrounded by. My dad likes to tell the story of whenever I was 4, my people would ask me what my name was, and I'd say, I play the violin. So, and I haven't started playing the violin yet, but my parents knew that they needed to get on that and start lessons with me since I had shown such an interest. So violin, I started playing at age 4.5, 5 years old. And then just throughout both of my parents, but especially my dad, did a great job with just kind of shaping me, shaping my musicianship, worked with me a lot as I got older in my practicing, telling me what I need to work on and, oh, no, play it like this. He was very musical in that sense with me in my teaching. And there just wasn't anything else, you know, that I felt I could do. Like I felt like music was a calling. And then as far as going into teaching music, I decided to go into performance major, but also did music education because I felt like that was also a good thing to get under my belt. I didn't decide right away to go into teaching. I did lots of private teaching, and I learned so much from being a private teacher, private instructor. And then, so I graduated with 2 bachelors, 1 in performance and 1 in music education, and then went directly into a master's in music education. Found that very, I really enjoyed doing that. Learned a lot about research and the different aspects of music education, and there's so much more there than just being a teacher. But anyway, after that, a year or two after that, I decided that there was an opening at Wood Middle School, and I felt like I needed to try this as a teacher, as a public school orchestra director, try it. And so I took that job and just really enjoyed being able to teach students music and the love of music, and just it's such an outlet for so many students, and it's very rewarding for me to be able to show that. And then Johnson High School was in the process of being built, and the first thought I had was, I want to do full orchestra. I really want to have an orchestra where I'm conducting full orchestra, and that was very exciting for me. And so I interviewed for the job and got that position, and I really love what I'm doing, and I really enjoy working with high school students, and especially being able to get that standard literature that I'm able to work with that group. It's yeah, I really enjoy that, doing that.
Fantastic.
That's my
Well, so one of the questions that came in from Josh Ruitas was, what instrument do you play? And I'm going to answer that first.
Okay.
I grew up playing the viola as my primary instrument. I started viola in 4th grade in a public school string program in Tacoma, Washington. And so viola was my primary instrument. But then once I got to what we call junior high, what most people around here call middle school, I started playing the electric bass guitar, and got really excited about that too. And then I started to dabble in lots of other instruments. And that's part of why I became a conductor and a composer, because I liked messing around with different instruments. The viola was my primary instrument until my daughter was born. When my daughter was born, I stopped practicing the viola because I realized there was only enough time in the day to do certain things really, really well. And so I stopped practicing the viola. And these days, my main instrument is actually sitting behind me on this piano. It's not the piano itself, it's the mandolin. And the mandolin is the instrument I play in a band called Slowpoke with Brandon Henson, the YOSA executive director, and Eric Peterson, and my friend Richard Keith. And so now the only instrument that I play in public is the mandolin, because I stopped practicing the viola long enough ago that I don't want to play it in front of people anymore. And anybody who's heard me play in rehearsal knows why that's true. So Mrs. George, you mentioned you play the violin. What about that thing hanging on the wall behind you? Do you play that instrument too?
I'm not cool enough to play that instrument. No. That's my husband's instrument, and I don't know if he's cool enough to play it either, but he has it and he messes around on it sometimes. But
Fantastic.
No, I'm sorry to disappoint people.
So Matt Tobar asked another question, which was, who do you look up to as a conducting role model? So I was curious about that for you. Who do you think of when you're trying to get better at what you do? Who are the role models that you look up to?
Well, there's not one particular conductor that I look up to. I would say, whenever I'm going through YouTube and watching different people conducting, the people I enjoy the most are the people that can show their emotions through their face and through their gestures of the music. That's really inspiring to me. Obviously, Dudamel is like one of those big ones. It's just so much fun to watch him conducting. And then also, that video of Bernstein conducting just with his face, the Haydn, that's just so amazing to see that. And it goes to show like how much musicians don't need you to be showing the beat necessarily. Obviously tempo changes and stuff like that, but they're not looking for that. Good musicians are not looking for that. What they're looking for is, what's a conductor trying to show in the music? And that's what it comes down to. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from. I will say though that the people that I look up most to, as my role models for conductors are people that I have had the opportunity to work with one-on-one, and getting those tips on how I can be a better conductor. And sometimes they don't even have to say, you need to do this in order to become better, or gesture this way so that you can, the orchestra knows what you're doing. I watch those people, even though I'm working one-on-one with them. When they get up on that podium, I'm watching them, and I'm watching how they do it. And so, you know, some of those people, Jeff Grogan has been a big one. Most recently, Eugene Dowdy, he also, you know, works with my group a few years back, and I learned so much from him. And then, of course, you, Mr. Peters, you know, the sessions that you've done with my orchestras, I learned some of those things from you just watching what you did. And I was like, oh, that's how I'm supposed to do it to get my orchestra to do what they need to do. So it's really the people that I've worked with one-on-one that have been my biggest role models for conducting.
Thank you. And that's actually a big thing for me too, that the people, first of all, my own youth orchestra conductors growing up, I worked with this guy, Harry Davidson, who now is the orchestra conductor at Duke University, who was my youth orchestra conductor and really, more than anybody else, opened my eyes to this as an option. And then I was the assistant to a guy named Joseph Primavera in Philadelphia. He was a legendary conductor in the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra. Scary, scary man, but a great musician. And I learned a lot from working with him about what to do and, frankly, also what not to do. So anybody who thinks I'm scary, I'm 5% of Joseph Primavera and constantly trying to remind myself not to go too far. And then, yeah, you know, you mentioned some of our great colleagues, and there's so many great colleagues who I admire, Jeffrey Grogan and lots of others. But these days I'm also very inspired by Marin Alsop, who is the music director of the Baltimore Symphony, and a real leader in conducting in the world today. Has done a lot for opening up opportunities for other women, but also has just is a tremendous, remarkable musician. And I've had the chance to work with her a little bit at some summer festivals and things where I learned a lot from her about what to do better, how to do things differently. One of the questions that came up from Caroline Courts was, are we going to have online sessions in the future? I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'll say it one more time. We plan to have a Q&A session almost every Sunday, at least through the rest of the YOSA season. Since Sunday afternoon is a time when a lot of us would be in rehearsal, we're moving to doing these sessions as a way to just kind of keep you in touch with the different conductors. Mrs. George, Alex Gonzalez asks, what's the most rewarding part of YOSA for you? What do you most love about working with YOSA?
Well, I think the most rewarding part is just being part of something that has done so much for our community. All of the outreaches that go on and everything. And also, you know, I'm a former YOSA student. I started YOSA when I was in 7th grade. And at that time, there was only 2 orchestras, the Symphony and Philharmonic. And just amazing about how much it has grown. I believe it's 7 orchestras, and then we have a wind ensemble and we have a flute choir. I'm just honored to be a part of what has happened and to have witnessed how much it's grown, how important it has become to San Antonio. That's, I think, the most rewarding part that I have about being a part of the YOSA team.
Fantastic. And what kind of advice would you have for students who want to become music teachers? This was Alex Holman who asked this question. So if you think of people who want to become music teachers themselves, how can they prepare and be ready to go into that career?
Well, keep doing what you're doing right now, practice, all that stuff. If you want to be a serious conductor, I think the biggest thing that you need to do is listen to recordings and watch live performances or watch performances. And the other thing is, as far as becoming an educator for music, I think I really first started becoming an educator when I started teaching private lessons. And teaching private lessons actually helped me be a better performer. There were things I was telling my student that I was like putting in the back of my head, it's like, you know, I should be doing that in my own practice. And it wasn't actually until I was teaching that I became really good about practicing with a metronome. And my teachers would always tell me, practice with a metronome, practice with a metronome. And it wasn't until I started teaching that I realized, you know, I should be practicing with a metronome. And I was also much more careful about how I played, my intonation, my tone. All of those things, I think, really became I was better at working at those things and concentrating on those things when I started teaching privately, and realized that I really enjoyed teaching too. So I think the more that you can teach on your own, the more you're going to learn about teaching and how to be a good teacher.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had the same experience that when I started teaching the viola, I was really 26 before I started to teach private lessons very much. And I got my first youth orchestra music director job and moved to a place where I didn't have very many local viola teachers. So I started teaching. And man, once I started teaching, I was already playing professionally, but my playing got much more refined and my preparation got much more organized the more I was teaching. And so for all of you who are thinking about becoming teachers, it's not too early to start teaching. Think about whether you can help out beginners. Think about whether you could be a mentor to your peers in your program at school. You want to do it in a way where you're not like going, hey, let me tell you how to do that if somebody's not looking for advice. But there are often people who look up to you as a role model in the orchestra or the band who might really benefit from the chance to get some advice from you. And if you really pay attention as you're doing that, you're going to start to refine your own playing and your own musicianship by doing that. I want to go to another topic. Several people have asked about YOSA's plans for our concert tour in June. And so I wanted to update you on that. There will actually be an email going out to all the musicians who are going on tour tomorrow. And the reality is, when we look toward when we look toward June 2020, we're not 100% sure what circumstances are going to be like, right? We're at a very uncertain time. But right now, in Boston and in Philadelphia and in New York, the 3 cities we're planning to visit, in all 3 of those cities, the venues that we're supposed to play are currently closed. And so as a result, we are looking at what the options are to continue with the tour, to postpone the tour, or to cancel the tour. And we're working with the venues, we're working with our tour operators. There are a whole bunch of different companies in the mix in planning the tour. And we've been in conversation with them for a couple of weeks now, but we are getting close to having a clearer sense of what our options are to move forward. One of our goals in doing that is to try to maximize the financial position of everybody involved in the tour, right? We don't want anybody to have to lose money. And so we're trying to do our best to work out solutions with all of the different vendors involved. And that's why I can't tell you right now today exactly what the answer is for what's going to happen with the tour, but we're going to send out information tomorrow to everybody who's going on tour. And just rest assured, YOSA staff is spending a lot of time and energy right now on doing our best to make the tour either happen in the future, or if it's not able to happen, for everybody to get out of this situation with the least financial exposure possible. So we'll keep you posted, and there will be an email coming out about that tomorrow. Another question that came in for Mrs. George was, who's your favorite composer? And you can name more than one, because I know that's a hard question. So Mrs. George, who are your favorite composers?
That is a hard question to answer, because there are so many out there. And then, also I think for me, it's like not necessarily a composer, but like compositions composers have made, you know what I mean? So I might not like every single thing of one composer, but the majority, right? So Brahms is at the top of my list. Brahms is a big doozy for me. And I have to admit that I think my dad, I really look up to my dad a lot. And I think he kind of exposed me more to Brahms. And I just fell in love with Brahms's symphonies and then his sonatas. So I really enjoy his compositions. Another one, lots of Russian composers. I mean, I just kind of feel like, yeah, there's so many out there. Rachmaninoff, Stravinsky. Stravinsky, I really, really enjoy listening to. Shostakovich, Tchaikovsky. There's lots of, I'm getting hearts. I think people agree with me. Yeah, so those are probably at the top of my list. And then Beethoven, like, especially more recently, I feel like, as a young person, maybe I didn't feel as so much inclined to listen to Beethoven, but especially his symphonies. I just really enjoy listening to Beethoven now.
Yeah, well, I'm in the same ballpark with Brahms. I mean, Brahms for me is just like, it just inexhaustibly exciting. And I first started to fall in love with Brahms when I was 16, playing Brahms' Second Symphony in a youth orchestra, in the Tacoma Youth Symphony. And so then after that, I just got the Brahms bug and started to listen to more and more Brahms and play more and more Brahms. And Brahms is the bomb. You know, I just keep coming back to it over and over and over again. And the older I get, the more I love it. And at the same time, the more I feel like I've got more to learn from it. But I love a lot of the same composers that you mentioned. Because I'm a composer myself, I'm a big fan of a lot of 20th century and 21st century music. I think there's a lot of great music being written today. And I'm especially a fan of John Adams, and I think his music is incredibly powerful. And then somebody I went to school with, Jennifer Higdon, who was a classmate of mine in college, and she's a Pulitzer Prize-winning composer who I think is one of the most exciting composers today. There are so many others, though. There's just so, you know, one of the reasons I do this is like, I love music. I just love, I love being excited about music and trying to share that excitement with other people. That's part of what's so great about a youth orchestra, is watching you guys fall in love with this music as we play it. Somebody just mentioned, Sydney Silva just mentioned being excited about the Beethoven Fifth Symphony that the YOSA Symphony played at the Winter Showcase. You know, what a great opportunity as a high school student to play a Beethoven symphony. And, you know, that's something you're going to remember for the rest of your life. I'm excited about next fall that the YOSA Philharmonic is going to play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And for me, that's the only Beethoven symphony that I have not performed as a conductor. I've conducted the other 8, and this is my first chance to do the Ninth Symphony. So I'm really looking forward to getting everybody back together and doing the Ninth Symphony. Hopefully that won't be the first time I see everybody, but looking forward to coming back together in the fall and doing that music. So what about, how do you plan your rehearsal time, Mrs. George? When you're thinking about an orchestra you work with and you only see them once a week at YOSA, how do you think about putting that together, as opposed to school where you see everybody, well, not right now, but normally see everybody daily? In the YOSA experience, when you're apart for 6 days and come back together, what do you think about in trying to plan those rehearsals?
So I think probably most of my planning comes before the first rehearsal. That's when I'm selecting the music that we're going to be playing. I try my best, and it's always, you know, sometimes I'm more successful than other times, but I always try to pick music that I feel like the students in that orchestra can play, overall can play. And putting it together, like you said, just once a week, in the amount of time that we have, 2-hour rehearsal once a week. So I pick the music. I try to pick music that I feel hopefully will be interesting to each section, especially my cellos and my violas, basses. I try not to pick music that's pa-pas all the time. And then I go through the music, look over the bowings and write in any bowings if I feel it's necessary. As far as fingerings, maybe I'll put those in sometimes, but I know that so many students do have teachers that will put in fingerings and such. And then before that first rehearsal, I will look up the recordings, and I'll actually have that prepared for the first rehearsal, for the first reading, because I think that sometimes we're a lot better at our read-throughs if we have an understanding of what to expect for each piece that we're going to be playing. And I think the students really enjoy that because they know now, like, what is our end product in this? For every week that we do it, I make sure that I hit every piece, because, you know, if somebody missed one Sunday and then they come the next Sunday and then I don't play one of those, or we don't rehearse one of those pieces, now it's been 2 or 3 weeks since they've last rehearsed that piece with us. And then I will mark stuff in my parts so I know that's the spot that we need to hit for the next week. And then as we get closer to the performance, I will record run-throughs of the group playing through their music. And then I'll go home and I'll listen to it and I'll make notes of specific spots maybe we need to hit. And I also like to, if there's time, I also like for my students to listen to their run through. And I know sometimes I get grunts and oh, and but I think it's very helpful for them to hear where they are in their music at that point, and they understand why I'm working on the stuff that we need to work on in preparation for our concert. So that's how I prepare.
Excellent. Sydney Silva had a great comment about practicing with a recording being a good tool. And that's absolutely true. You know, there's a lot of different ways to practice. And I always point out to YOSA Philharmonic that sometimes you don't have time or energy to practice. You can still listen to a recording just following your part. And there's actually tremendous musical value in just following your music with your eyes and listening to a recording. Playing along with a recording is useful and valuable. It is also important, you know, to take things apart and hit the more difficult parts slowly. And, you know, because just playing through, sometimes you just focus on the things that are fun to play and the things that are already easy. And so sometimes we need to identify what are the things we aren't good at yet and try to bring those to the fore. But playing with recordings and just listening in general is a great way to go. If you haven't seen it, we posted a video on active listening a little over a week ago where I talked about some strategies for listening to music. And I'm going to be coming back to that and doing some more talking in videos about how to listen to music well. Our Symphonic Winds conductor, Andy Post, put out a video just a couple of days ago on the YOSA channels talking about how to prepare for ensemble rehearsals. What do you do in between rehearsals to get ready? And right now, one of the challenges for all of us is we don't know when our next rehearsal is, whether it's YOSA or whether it's our school ensembles or really any group of musicians we're working with. You know, my band Slowpoke, we don't know when the next time we're going to play together is. But for all of us, if we continue to work on the music that our ensembles are working on, it keeps us engaged, it keeps us healthy, it keeps us happy, and it also is a really great place, a really great way to be ready when that day comes. A day is going to come where we're going to be able to say, guess what? We're going to be back together at school, we're going to be back together at YOSA, we're going to have that chance to make music. And so the work we do in the meantime is going to really help with that for all of us. I want to mention one more time, we're getting close to wrapping up. I want to mention one more time that we're going to have these Q&A sessions with different YOSA conductors every Sunday for the next several weeks. We won't be doing it on Easter Sunday, but most other Sundays for the rest of the school year, we're going to be looking at doing these sessions with different conductors. I want to thank Mrs. George for joining us today. Good to get a chance to chat with you. And, you know, I've had the chance to hang out with Mrs. George a lot. She was one of the first people in San Antonio when I moved here almost 11 years ago. She was one of the first people who really welcomed me, and we went out to lunch and got to know each other, talked about music, became really great colleagues and friends. But I'm glad you guys have a chance to get to know her some more too. And there will be more.
I wish it were longer. I had so much fun. I wish this was longer.
Well, we'll come back and do one again another time. But thanks to everybody who tuned in. And don't forget to wash your hands. And, you know, then practice. And after you finish practicing, wash your hands again. So have a great Sunday, everybody. And we'll be in touch again soon. Thanks, Mrs. George.
Thank you. Bye.